Imagine spending 20 years guarding a secret so dangerous that if it came out, it could destroy a family, collapse a company worth billions, and put a man in prison. Now imagine you're the only person on earth who knows that secret. That was the life of one man. Not a billionaire. Not a celebrity. Just a quiet, hardworking lawyer from a small office in Ohio, USA. His name was Daniel Cross. For 2 decades, Daniel worked for one of the richest men in America, a billionaire named Robert Hale. Daniel wasn't just his lawyer. He was his closest confidant. He knew about every deal, every dollar, every enemy Robert Hale ever made. But there was one secret Robert made him promise, on his life, never to reveal. Not to the press. Not to the family. Not to anyone. Until the day Robert Hale died. And that's when everything changed. Because Daniel Cross had a choice to make. A choice that would either protect a legacy, or destroy it forever. This is a story about money, power, family, and the one truth that no amount of wealth could hide. Stay with me till the end, because this story will make you think differently about success, family, and what really matters in life. Let's begin. To understand this story, you first need to understand the man at the center of it, Robert Hale. Robert wasn't born rich. He grew up in a small town in the Midwest, the son of a factory worker and a schoolteacher. His family didn't have much, but they had discipline. His father used to say one thing to him every single day before school. "Robert, the world doesn't owe you anything. You have to take what you want the right way." Robert took those words seriously. He studied hard, worked 3 jobs through college, and by the age of 25, he had started his first small business, a logistics company that helped local farmers transport their goods faster and cheaper. It wasn't glamorous work. But Robert had one gift that most people don't have. He could see opportunity where others saw problems. Over the next 15 years, that small logistics company grew into a massive transportation and shipping empire. By the time Robert turned 45, he was worth over $3 billion. His name appeared in business magazines. He was invited to speak at universities. People called him the self-made king of shipping. But behind the success, behind the interviews and the awards, Robert Hale was carrying something heavy. Something he never spoke about publicly. And the only person who knew what it was his lawyer. Daniel Cross first met Robert Hale when Robert's company was still small, just a handful of trucks and a rented warehouse. Daniel was a young attorney trying to build his own practice. Robert hired him to handle a simple contract dispute. Robert was impressed by Daniel's honesty. Unlike other lawyers who tried to impress him with big words and big promises, Daniel simply told him the truth, even when the truth wasn't what Robert wanted to hear. "I don't need a lawyer who agrees with me," Robert told him one day. "I need a lawyer who tells me when I'm wrong." From that day forward, Daniel became Robert's personal attorney. As Robert's business grew, so did Daniel's role in his life. Daniel handled his contracts, his real estate, his company mergers, and eventually, his most private personal matters too. Robert trusted Daniel more than he trusted his own business partners. More than he trusted some of his own family members. And that trust would soon carry a weight that very few people could imagine. It was a rainy evening in October, about 20 years before Robert's death, when Daniel Cross received a phone call that changed everything. It was almost midnight. Daniel was at home when his phone rang. It was Robert. "Daniel, I need you to come to the office. Now. Alone." Daniel didn't argue. In 20 years of knowing Robert, he had never heard that tone in his voice before. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. Urgency mixed with shame. When Daniel arrived at Robert's private office downtown, the building was empty except for the 2 of them. Robert was sitting behind his desk, a glass of whiskey in front of him, untouched. "I need to tell you something," Robert said. "And once I tell you, you can never repeat it. Not to my wife. Not to my children. Not to my board of directors. Not to anyone. Even after I'm gone. Daniel sat down slowly. As a lawyer, he had heard many confessions in his career: business fraud, tax issues, family disputes. But nothing prepared him for what Robert was about to say. Robert took a long breath and began. Now, before we go further into the secret itself, let's pause here and understand something important about this story. This isn't just about scandal or gossip. It's about a decision every person eventually faces in life. The conflict between loyalty and truth, between protecting people we love and being honest with them. Robert Hale's secret would test exactly that conflict, not just in his own life, but years later, in Daniel's life too. So what did Robert tell him that rainy night? Before we reveal the secret itself, it's worth understanding something about wealthy, successful people that most of us never see from the outside. We often assume that once someone becomes rich and powerful, their problems disappear. We see the mansions, the private jets, the magazine covers, and we think, that person has everything figured out. But in reality, wealth doesn't remove problems. It often multiplies them, and changes their shape completely. A poor man's secret might be about surviving the month. A billionaire's secret can involve entire companies, family inheritances, government investigations, and the lives of hundreds of employees. The higher someone climbs, the more they have to lose, and the more reasons they find to hide the truth. Robert Hale's secret wasn't about a hidden affair or secret debt, the kind of things people usually imagine. It was something far more complicated. It involved his family, his company's founding story, and a decision he made early in his career, a decision that helped build his empire, but came at a cost he never told anyone about. Psychologists who study wealthy individuals often point out that extreme success can create extreme isolation. The more money and power a person gains, the fewer people they can genuinely trust. Family members may want something from them. Business partners may have hidden motives. Even friends can feel different once money enters the relationship. That's exactly why Robert only trusted one person with the truth, his lawyer. Not because Daniel was family, but because Daniel had no financial stake in Robert's empire. Daniel had nothing to gain or lose by knowing the truth, except his word. And Robert Hale needed exactly that, someone who would carry his secret not for money, not for power, but purely out of professional and personal loyalty. This is where the story becomes deeply human. Because what Robert revealed that night wasn't really about money at all. It was about a mistake from his past, a mistake that built his fortune, but broke something else in the process. Let's go back to that rainy night in Robert's office. Robert told Daniel a story from nearly 3 decades earlier, a story from before the shipping empire, before the mansions, before Robert Hale became a household name in American business. In his 20s, Robert had a business partner, a man named Walter Simmons. Walter and Robert started the very first version of the logistics company together. 2 young men with a used truck, a small loan, and a big dream. But early on, the business struggled. They were drowning in debt, and Walter wanted to sell the company and walk away before they lost everything. Robert didn't want to give up. He believed, deep in his gut, that the business could succeed if they just held on a little longer. So Robert made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Using a technicality in their partnership agreement, one that Walter didn't fully understand at the time, Robert restructured the company's ownership. He convinced Walter to sign new documents, telling him they were simply updating the business for a new investor. In reality, those documents quietly reduced Walter's ownership share from 50% to almost nothing. Robert justified it to himself at the time. He told himself he was the one doing all the real work. He told himself Walter wanted to quit anyway. He told himself it was for the good of the business. 6 months later, the company landed a massive contract that changed everything. The business exploded in growth. And Walter, the man who helped start it all, was left with almost nothing. Walter never fully understood what had happened. He simply believed the business failed to pay him what was fair, and eventually, defeated and broke, he moved to another state, took a regular job, and quietly disappeared from Robert's life. Robert became a billionaire. Walter became a forgotten man. And for nearly 30 years, Robert carried the guilt of what he had done, a decision that built one of the largest fortunes in America, at the cost of the one person who trusted him most. That night in the office, Robert told Daniel the full truth. He even had a hidden file, documents proving exactly what had happened, along with Walter's real contact information, which Robert had secretly kept track of over the years, even sending him quiet, anonymous financial help disguised as random grants and scholarships for Walter's children. Robert made Daniel promise one thing: if anything ever happened to him, if he passed away, Daniel must personally deliver that file, along with a large financial settlement, directly to Walter Simmons or his family. Quietly. Without press. Without lawsuits. Just the truth, and what was owed. For 20 years, Daniel Cross carried that secret. He watched Robert build his public image as the self-made king of shipping. He watched Robert donate millions to charity, appear at award ceremonies, and mentor young entrepreneurs. He watched Robert's children grow up believing their father was a flawless hero. And through all of it, Daniel said nothing. Not because he agreed with what Robert did, but because he understood something important. People are not defined by their worst mistake, if they spend the rest of their life trying to make it right. 20 years after that rainy night, Robert Hale passed away from a sudden heart attack. He was 71 years old. His death made national news. Business channels replayed his old interviews. Universities that received his donations issued public statements of gratitude. His children stood at the funeral, surrounded by hundreds of employees, business partners, and even a few politicians who had once relied on his company's support. To the entire world, Robert Hale died a hero. But Daniel Cross sat quietly in the back of the funeral hall, holding a small, worn folder in his hands, the same file Robert had shown him 20 years earlier. Now, Daniel had a decision to make. Robert's children, his son Michael and daughter Elena, had already taken over leadership of the company. The family's public image was carefully built and fiercely protected by a team of PR specialists. If Daniel revealed the truth now, it could trigger lawsuits, media scandals, and possibly even damage the thousands of jobs that depended on the company's stability. But if Daniel stayed silent forever, an old man named Walter Simmons, now in his 70s himself, living a quiet, modest life, would never know the truth about what really happened to him decades ago. And more importantly, he would never receive what he was rightfully owed. Daniel remembered Robert's exact words from that rainy night. Quietly. Without press. Without lawsuits. Just the truth, and what was owed. Robert hadn't asked Daniel to destroy his legacy. He hadn't asked him to hold a press conference, or expose the family publicly. He simply asked for one thing: make it right, privately, the way Robert himself never had the courage to do while he was alive. So, 2 weeks after the funeral, Daniel Cross made a phone call. Not to a journalist. Not to Robert's children. But to Walter Simmons. Walter Simmons was now 74 years old, living in a small house in rural Indiana. He had spent most of his working life as a warehouse supervisor after leaving the logistics business decades earlier. He had raised 2 children, both of whom had grown up and moved away, but he still remembered, faintly, the man he once called his business partner and friend, Robert Hale. When Daniel arrived at Walter's home, introducing himself as Robert Hale's longtime attorney, Walter was confused, and a little defensive. "If this is about money, Robert owes some other company," Walter said. "I haven't spoken to that man in almost 30 years. Daniel sat down across from him at the kitchen table and gently placed the old folder between them. "This isn't about another company," Daniel said quietly. "This is about you." Over the next hour, Daniel explained everything: the original partnership, the restructuring of the ownership documents, the contract that came 6 months later, and the fortune that followed. He explained how Robert had carried the guilt privately for 30 years, quietly supporting Walter's children through anonymous scholarships without ever taking credit. Walter sat in silence for a long time. His hands trembled slightly as he looked through the old documents. Documents he hadn't seen in decades. Documents that finally explained a chapter of his life that had never made sense to him. He wasn't angry, not exactly. He was overwhelmed. 30 years of quiet resentment, confusion, and unanswered questions suddenly had an explanation. "Why didn't he just tell me?" Walter finally asked. "Any of those years. Why wait until he was gone?" Daniel didn't have a perfect answer, but he gave Walter the most honest one he could. "I think some men aren't brave enough to face the people they've wronged while they're still alive," Daniel said. "But he wasn't brave enough to let the truth die with him either. That's why I'm here." As promised, Daniel presented Walter with the financial settlement Robert had arranged years earlier, an amount that, while it could never replace 3 decades of a different life, was enough to secure Walter's future, and his children's futures, completely. Walter didn't take the money out of greed. In fact, he initially tried to refuse it, saying he had built a peaceful life without it. But Daniel gently reminded him, this wasn't charity. This was simply what had always belonged to him. In the months that followed, Daniel Cross quietly closed the final chapter of Robert Hale's hidden past. The settlement was handled privately through a separate trust, avoiding public scandal, protecting both the Hale family's legacy and Walter Simmons' privacy. Robert's children never learned every detail of what their father had done 30 years earlier. But interestingly, they did notice a change in company policy shortly after their father's passing, a strengthened ethics division, stricter partnership protections, and a scholarship fund quietly named in honor of early business partners who helped build the company's foundation. Whether they understood the deeper meaning behind it or not, they carried the spirit of their father's silent guilt forward, even without knowing the full story. As for Daniel Cross, he never spoke publicly about what he did. He didn't write a book. He didn't sell the story to a magazine. He simply continued his quiet legal career for a few more years before retiring. When later asked by a close friend why he never used the story to gain personal fame or publicity, after all, it was a dramatic, headline-worthy secret, Daniel gave a simple answer. "It was never my secret to profit from. It was my responsibility to finish." So, what can we really learn from the story of Robert Hale, Daniel Cross, and Walter Simmons? First, success built on hidden wrongs never truly feels complete, no matter how much money, fame, or power comes with it. Robert Hale gained everything the world measures as success, yet he carried a private weight for 30 years that no fortune could lift. Second, true loyalty isn't about blind agreement. It's about doing what's right, even when it's difficult, even when no one is watching, and even when the person you're protecting is no longer alive to see it done. And third, it's never too late to make things right. Robert couldn't find the courage to face Walter while he was alive, but he made sure the truth and the debt would be settled after he was gone. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't brave in the way we usually admire. But it was honest in the end. In life, most of us will never build a billion-dollar company. Most of us will never carry secrets as big as Robert Hale's. But almost all of us carry something smaller, an apology we never gave, a truth we never shared, a wrong we never made right. This story is a reminder that we don't have to wait until it's too late. The best time to make things right with someone is today, while we still have the chance to say it ourselves, face to face, instead of leaving it in a folder for someone else to deliver after we're gone. If this story made you think, made you feel something, or reminded you of someone in your own life, that's exactly why stories like this matter. Thank you for watching this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe for more powerful real lifestyle stories like this one every week. Let me know in the comments, if you were Daniel, would you have told the truth the same way he did? See you in the next story. Take care, and until then, always choose honesty even when it's hard.